Milo. We're live after Christmas. Hopefully, I took a couple of days off. Hopefully, you guys all had an amazing Christmas. Ours was fantastic, and thanks for all the well wishes from everybody. That's great. Time to get back to work. In fact, this is our Project Morning Motivation. It's still morning technically because it is before noon, and I actually already got some stuff done today. What I did is I got on the phone with Summit. I ordered up the rings for the L78 396, 375 horse 396, or 425 horse, depending on what side of the Corvette ownership program you're on. I got that done and then talked to Ben over at the car farm about the Omni and got a couple of things that I needed to run the 2.2 on the engine dyno was a 6-bolt flywheel and flywheel bolt. And then also I asked him to send me another early log style fuel rail because the one that I have is has a lot of like stuff in it. It's got a lot of rust and particulate matter. And I flushed it out a couple of times, but I'm still worried about stuff getting into the injectors and kind of clogging the injector. So we'd like to make that obviously not happen. That would be much, much better. So he's going to send out one. He said he has a couple there. So it's a pretty common one. So he thinks he has some good ones that are not rusty so that we can run those up on the dyno when we run that manifold. We'll run a lot of tests probably with that manifold, but eventually it'll just be taken off and thrown away as it probably should be. And then we'll run the 1-piece and the 2-piece stuff and then hopefully a Super Richie custom version also. So that will be good. What I'm going to do today is we're going to talk about the thumbnail that I have up is a Chevy Sprint Turbo. So for you guys not familiar with it, I owned one of those back in the day. It is a 1-liter 3-cylinder overhead cam 8-valve motor, not even a 4-valve. But it was fairly cool for its day because even back in the mid 80s when this thing was running around, it had a couple of good things. It had port injection, even though the NA versions had throttle body injection. It had port injection. It had a factory turbo. It had a factory air-to-air intercooler. It had, on the distributor, it had a boost, retard, and vacuum advance setup, a dual pod action, which was kind of cool. And I drove around a bunch on it, drove it every day, set some land speed records with it, still have the motor that I set the land speed record with, and have another motor that can go together that would be even more formidable because I have forged rods and forged pistons and all that for it. But one of the other things that I have, and I had actually, it's been boxed up for so long that I thought I had forgotten what I had done on this head. I know that we had ported one, but I had forgotten the other work that we had done to it. In fact, I took this cylinder head and we did porting on it and we welded up the injector bungs. So, and you're probably thinking, why, where are the injectors going to go? Why would you do that? Well, the reason that I did that is because I had also made another intake manifold for another custom Super Richie intake manifold. And again, like all of them, it was intended to be adjustable. But the other thing that made it unique, at least as far as the Chevy Sprint Turbo was concerned, is that it had injector bungs in the intake manifold. So obviously what we've done is because the injector bungs are in the head in the Sprint, which is not uncommon. The 3800 has it like that. At least the turbo version does, or the supercharged version does. The NA version, they're in the intake manifold, but or vice versa. I forgot which one. But what I wanted to do was we wanted to put the injectors in the intake manifold and move them away from the valve, basically from the combustion chamber, to aid in charge cooling. Now, we already had that when I was running that thing around and when we were setting the land speed records back at the Maxton Mile, it had an air-to-water intercooler on a fairly good-sized core, oversized for a 100 horsepower 3-cylinder turbo motor with a still kind of restricted by the factory turbo. That ultimately was the limit of what we could do with that thing. There was some limitation in the vane meter setup too, only because of our ability to properly tune it. So it took a combination of clicks on the vane meter and a rising rate, 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1 rising rate, and adjustable fuel pressure regulator and then injector sizing. And, we had a bigger fuel pump on it and a boosted pump. As a matter of fact, I think what the pump that I put in there was the original stock pump from the Civic that I had from the Civic Si. So I think that's the one we put in there. We put a Kenny Bell boosted pump on it. And unfortunately, that car got stolen when we were getting a cage. I had a buddy of mine, Tom, that was putting a cage in it so that we could take it to Bonneville and set some Bonneville records with it. But I still have that motor, and I still have the other motor, the race motor that was going to be the race motor with all the Ford stuff. In fact, somebody had contacted me and was interested in that. So if you are still interested in that, please let me know. But on the intake manifold, my idea was to put injectors out at the entry, basically, of the runners going into the intake manifold, and then obviously down into the head port. And that way, with injecting the fuel farther away from the valve, we could get more charge cooling and then add even more power. And then hopefully the intake design itself, with the length and diameter tubing that the combination I was going to have. And we could change the plenum volume too, although I haven't seen a big change in power from doing that. But the intake manifold would lend itself to some adjustability. We could find out what the thing wanted. And then obviously with this, the idea was to get rid of the vane meter and have some sort of standalone, which I'm hoping that we can do on the engine dyno. That would be kind of cool. If we can do that on the engine dyno, then I can run this little 3-cylinder on there. I'm hoping that the dyno goes down that low to where it only makes 100 horsepower. But we can put bigger turbos on it. So I made back in the day when I was doing all this testing, I did a compound version of this thing with a stock 1.8 turbo Volkswagen turbo and this stock turbo. And I tried that one, and I also tried the compound setup. Might have been, I think the compound one was an actual Garrett GT20 turbo that I had with the stock RB32 turbo. And then we had an air-to-water intercooler. I only had one on that. I didn't have an intercooler, charge cooler between the two. But we weren't running a lot of boost. I think we were only running about 20 pounds on that. And it did good. But my problem with that was the ability to tailor the air fuel and timing, because I was just adjusting the vane meter so that it opened slower, basically, and wouldn't open until it had a lot of boost. But now, if we can get a standalone management system, I can put big injectors on there. We can put a good size intercooler, good size turbo on there. And the other thing I want to do on that one, and I hadn't done that yet, I think I have a spare camshaft for it. So we want to regrind a camshaft for it too, because I know that a lot of times, and people said the same thing in that community that they did in the 2.2 community. Cams don't matter. We're just running boost, but they do. If you're trying to make a lot of power, something other than the stock cam is definitely the way to go. In fact, I never even investigated on the Sprint side. I never even investigated the possibility of the NA cams. We know that the XFI cam would have been mild, but the other ones may have been better. So I don't know if there was something to be had there, but I know that we could have reground them, and people had done that already. And then an adjustable cam sprocket, obviously, to advance and retard it would have also been possible. But with a ported head and the welded up injector bungs, and then placing the injectors in the intake manifold farther away from the valve, I think we could have picked up some good power, because the semi-frustrating thing about working with that motor is, every pound of boost is like 1 or 2 horsepower. It's not very much. So it looks like a reasonable amount when you're looking at it on the scale, because you go from 100 to 105 or 110, and that's a 10% gain in power, which is quite a bit. But it takes a pretty good change and a fair bit of boost to make those kinds of gains on something that was originally rated at about 70 horsepower with boost. So not a terribly powerful motor, but like everything, it's fun to do all this stuff. It's fun to turn the boost up and, make more power. And then it was cool because I drove that everywhere. I drove it when I lived in Vegas. I used to go to West Tech. And so I'd make that trip back and forth. I drove it everywhere. and and we got to set records in it. So it was not only was it a cool car to do a bunch of testing with on the chassis dyno, which is where we did all the testing, but also to be able to drive it around and enjoy it. As soon as I got that thing, we drove it out to our little our test area in Mexico and did some top speed tests just to find out what the stock one would do. So it's pretty cool. Okay, let's see what you guys got going on. I need to put a poll up. Will locating the injectors in the relocating the injectors in the Sprint manifold. I'm gonna put the cylinder Chevy Sprint, and you gotta have the word turbo in there. Well, relocating the injectors in the 3-cylinder Chevy Sprint turbo manifold improve power. So that will be our poll for today, and then we'll see what you guys got going on. Again, hopefully everybody had a good 1-liter Mafias in the house. Well, this has got to be right up your alley then, right? Yeah, for you guys out there in the rest of the country, hopefully you guys are. It's fairly cool. I mean, it's not cold here. It's raining, but it's not cold like it is in other parts of the country. I think it's got to be in the 50s. Yeah, it's 57, so it's not cold at all. I went outside and I'm like, man, the rain brought some warmer weather, which is good. Have a holly jolly Christmas. Yeah, Eric, I guess it's not an 8-valve. It's a 2-valve head, I should have said. So it's a 6-valve. I like the odd number of cylinder engines, of Volvo inline 5s. You have the Yaris. That Yaris GR motor, that's serious. I literally just got my peanut ports back from flow testing the porting I did. What's your email? If you're interested, I can send you the results. They're fairly impressive. I'll put my email address down here. So you can send me over the flow results. I'm guessing that they're in the 240 or 250 range, probably. I used to have a 69 Triumph Trident T150 3-cylinder or a Kawasaki triple. Is there power to be had from moving the injectors to the intake versus leaving them in the head? Yeah, if you move them farther away, there's definitely power to be had. And so people that are answering the question, they already know the answer to the poll. I know the Super Coupe heads have injector bungs in them as well. Yeah, the 3800 stuff is like that. The NA ones and the supercharged ones are different. Geo Metro, yep. Geo Metro, Chevy Sprint, Suzuki built the motors for them. I know a lot of the 1.3-liter Suzuki motors have raced those and built those for that. That's the 4-cylinder version, though, yeah. And I've raced a lot of those and built those for 3 years. In fact, have one of the world's fastest NA Swift GTs. Did you set it at Bonneville? Rags 409, 1-liter Mafia. Richard, my 12-year-old son is building his first engine. That's going to be a stock bottom end 351 Windsor with boost, but the crank is scarred. Now it's going to be a 393. That'll be even better, right? We have a 73 Mustang across the street from us. It's very nice. It's a all original convertible Cleveland deal, 4V Cleveland. What do you think about a training upgrade on a 5.3? Do you think they're worth upgrading? I do on a lot of applications, not necessarily for power or anything, but if you have like me, go to the wrecking yard and get a 4.8 or 5.3, or if you're lucky enough to find a 6-liter or the aluminum 5.3, the L33, when you go and get one of those, and like my truck, they have 300,000+ miles. Upgraded trunnions is not a bad idea. I mean, let's face it, they have a lot of miles on them, but you're not going to get more power or RPM or those kinds of things from a trunnion upgrade. So, come on, what are you doing, camera? Come on, what are you doing to me here? It's not cooperating. Miley, what are you doing, huh? What are you doing? The Swift GTU, the 210, 340 cams would rev to 8,800. Yeah, the 4-valve stuff would RPM. I remember we raced against a guy that had one in World Challenge, and he was spinning it up pretty good. Put a Delorto 3-pack throttle body. Yeah, you can put one from a Weber section for a Porsche would go on there. We need a SHO Taurus 6-cylinder. Yep. You have one, Eric? Air Rock? That car used to be my life. They are cool. I loved mine. I drove it everywhere. Peanut Port's 279. That is good. That's enough to make a lot of power. The camera does have a astigmatism. GL8 swap a 5.7 all-wheel drive Pursuit. Richard, do you know of any aftermarket hop-up parts for the 3-cylinder GLs? Just the normal stuff, just turbos. I didn't ever get anything from anybody that was selling stuff specifically. I actually had to have the rods custom made by Potter. The pistons are Wiseco, so those were available. At least they were back in the day. The head, obviously, a ported version. You can get head studs for them, and I think you can get MLS gaskets, which is what I would want to put on there if I was trying to make lots of boost. We didn't have an MLS gasket; we just had a Fel Pro on it when we were running it at the Maxton Mile. But the guys from Schneider do reground cams for them, but I never saw anybody do an intake manifold or anything for them. So if you want to blow it up, I don't really want to blow it up. It'd be cool to run one. I don't remember what is the bell housing on the Taurus? Is it the same as the Duratec stuff? Daniel, I used to be a member of the Sprint community, the forums or the groups or whatever that were online. I haven't been there in a really long time, but people did offer cams for them. But I think that they were reground, though. And I thought somebody was doing either index sprockets or adjustable ones for them. I'd like to see the Mirror Cruiser 375 4-cylinder. Yeah, those are cool. The one that had the big blockheads on them. Not a Weber carb. Look up Benelli 899 Delorto EFI. Okay. What MLS should I get for an LM7? So you want to put an MLS head gasket on it? The ones that we use on the big bang motors were the factory LS9 ones, although the bore size is pretty big. Or we'll use Felpro has a bunch of MLS gaskets for the smaller bore stuff. Mad Mod, the 3-liter Vulcan, SHO Taurus, I believe Duratec as well. Because didn't they have the I just wondered if the bell housing was the same on the SHO as it was on the standard 3-liter that they had on the Tauruses. The Peanut Port heads, the flow start dropping at 550, down 6 CFM from 500. I think you might have to make the port bigger for that. 4-cylinder engine that will be available with the LS head is already available with a Windsor head. What are they using that for? Is it an industrial head, industrial motor or something? Thanks for the information. What turbo would you recommend for a 3-cylinder Geo? Well, have you maxed out the stock one already? If you have, then like I said, we tried the Volkswagen one, which is weird because they always make bizarre flanges and stuff for that stuff. but we put a GT20 on it, which is a lot of turbo, probably not as good as the stock one for like a daily driver. 3Tech, that's right. Probably not in business anymore, but they were having them ground by somebody, right? The guys from Schneider will regrind those. A Ford Ranger 3-liter trans bolts right up. Okay, so the a rear-wheel drive bell housing is available for that Taurus then, right? Casey, we talked about that. I did see the LS 4-cylinder one, but everybody sent me that thing. So, well, relocating the injector, I should put injectors in the 3-cylinder Chevy Sprint manifold, improve power. 80% are saying yes. And you guys are correct, because it will. Milo, do you need to go out there and get him? You need to attack? I burned valves all the time on my Metro 3-cylinder. Fixed the problem with stainless valves from 3Tech. Cool. Can you transfer me a few percentages of your knowledge? Huh, Milo? What are you doing, huh? What are you doing? You got an itch? What are you doing, huh? What are you doing? Mad Mud. 340 horse. I don't think 500. The 500 foot-pounds is correct on that. I don't think that's a real number. Okay, go get it. It wouldn't make that much torque unless it had boost. Mike Cove. I remember that name. He used to run 3Tech. He's retired. He's doing some minor stuff. I still got a bunch of Sprint stuff. Plug in the back of it. Not those big spiky ones from the Matrix, man. Those are serious. This is gonna feel weird. Yeah, to say the least. Mark, what's up? Right in our wheelhouse. We hold the record. Bonneville, fastest production turbo Sprint Hudson Boys. That's right. The Hudson Boys have like a bajillion records out there. So you guys better show some respect to Mark. I'm going to use MLS head gaskets. However, I don't have the part number. Mark, did you guys use MLS head gaskets on your Sprints, or did you just use Velcros? T13B 16 valve engine is the way to go. Yeah, but it's easy to make stuff with overhead cam 4 valve engines. That's easy to make power with. I thought the 340 500 claim was what the internals would hold up to. If it has an LS3 head on it, it certainly could support the 340 horsepower. The 500 foot-pounds would have to be boost or nitrous or something. The Sean, it's not an Isuzu motor. It's a Suzuki. Actually made it for the Geo and Firefly applications. Geo Metro. You guys did do an MLS head gasket. So did you guys have one made? Did you just have Cometic or somebody make you those gaskets? So still at 82% saying yes on the injector relocation. What are you trying to do there? Thought Milo was trying to get back in. The LS is the same bore and stroke as an L7. Okay, so you could use a big valve head on there. Pedro, what motor are you making 349 horsepower with? I'm gonna scroll back and see. Oh, a G13B. Okay. Daniel, I'm gonna scroll back and see. Oh, yeah, I don't know what the part number is on the Felpro stuff. But they have them based on bore size. For Felpro does. So they have 1061s or 1062s or that kind of stuff. I think, or if I remember right. They have factory replacement ones too. Let's see here. So nothing's coming up the way that we see them. I see a bunch of versions of the factory replacement ones. And then gasket kits. Small block Chevy. No, we're not talking about a small block Chevy. 305 head gaskets. Yeah, what's up? How would they have all of these before they would have an LS? $26,190 is the replacement one. Yeah, so it'd be 1161 or 1160, 1161L or 1161R because they are right and left specific. Would be the larger bore ones. Those would be the 4100s, and they have 4135s. 1160 would be a 3945. I think that's what we normally use, a Felpro 1160L or an 1160R. And then they also have them in different thicknesses. They have a 53 and a 41. We normally would get a 53. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. Oh, Daniel, okay. Rich Thompson knows all the specifics. Okay. So I'm scrolling. You should build a drop tank Lakester and put the Sprint engine. The belly tankers out there. Yeah. I like the single overhead cam 22Rs, but the intake and exhaust port are weird, or at least the ports are weird shape. Gregory, what's going on? Got a 671 coming for one of the LV3s. That'll be good. Trying to build a VK35 DE off of a Nissan Maxima. So parts, cam valve, spring retainers. I want to do some head work. See anybody doing head work? You don't see anybody doing porting on the heads? That's pretty normal for any kind of motor. If they don't offer an aftermarket head, which I'm sure nobody does, or if I don't know if anybody has for the VQ motor, does anybody have CNC programs for those already? For the probably not for the Maxima, but for the 350, would they have that? Or you could do it yourself. That's a good way to learn how to port them, and that if you do a little bit of porting, you can't ruin it. It could make it better. If maybe you're really good at it, you can improve it quite a bit. But the gains from head flow are going to be less if you don't have other things going on like a cam or heads or that kind of stuff. Okay. 34. Okay, nice. 78, 88, 64, 74, 78, 81. Nice. Coolio. Yeah, I don't know about that LS headed 4-cylinder. I think it's cool, but a lot like the big block headed 3.75 liter deal. I think that's cool because it's nice having way more cylinder head than you need for something. Because you could put a head that flows 350 or 400 or 450 or 500 CFM, depending on which kind of crazy big block head you put on that. And then the LS is the same way. You have heads that are, if it's an LS head, especially if it's an LS7 head, you have stuff that's way over 400 CFM if you decided that is what you needed. Did you guys ever get a Daihatsu Charade? Yeah, we had those here. They were available. We didn't ever get a 120 horsepower version of one though. I think all we got were NA versions. Yeah, I think that ours were more like 50 horsepower versions. I'm taking a look at it now, but I think that they were. So it's showing the 1 liter engine was 79 horsepower. The 926R prototype of the mid-engine Charade had 120 horsepower. Was a show car or something? Let's see. We're going to get rid of that. Get rid of that. Go back to here, our live stream. Okay, you sent the porting results. Yeah, I'll check them out. Check with Jim Wolf. I think they do head work for the VQs. Yeah, they should have had some sort of programs for those. Mad Mod. So you want to use the roots blower as an extraction device to extract the exhaust out? I don't know how well the rotors and stuff are going to stand up to 1,000+ horsepower exhaust on that. The heads flow 300. That would be a lot for that head. Richard, have you heard from David about your head? I have not. Have you done a head chamber match to the gasket video? So you want to match you want to port match the head chamber to the gasket? Usually the gasket is bigger than a lot of times the chamber is bigger than the bore is. So that would be a bad idea. The gasket is usually bigger than the bore. So having the chamber, if you're talking about matching it to the head gasket, that's usually not a good idea. Hey, for the 3-cylinder Sprint, can you use the 4-cylinder pistons with the displacement is 1.3 liter on the 4-cylinder and 1,000 on the 3-cylinder? They're both Suzuki. I think that there was, if I remember reading, I think that there was an interchange there. Somebody asked about injectors. Don't be worried about putting bigger injectors in an NA motor. We run huge things in there all the time. It's not a problem. And you're eventually going to put a turbo on it anyway, because if you're hanging around here, somebody's going to convince you to do it. Yeah, that's usually and a lot of times when we're taking a look for performance stuff for applications where they didn't really make a lot of stuff, the aftermarket didn't embrace the performance potential of whatever we're working on. We got to look outside and go, hey, look, the bore size is this big and the pin height is this big and it has this kind of dish. So we got to look at other stuff. Let's look at other weird stuff. Let's look at Suzuki stuff, or let's look at Subaru stuff or Volkswagen stuff or whatever it is, and try to figure out, hey, is there any kind of interchangeability, especially if we have, hey, look, these factory pistons are like 15 down in the hole. So we have that much room to play with. So if we have a pin height that is that much different, we have a rod length that's that much different. If we have a ringland thickness that's that much, we could play with it. And then the benefit is that you get to use math, which is awesome. Let's see here. So we're relocating the injector in the 3-cylinder Chevy Sprint turbo manifold. Improved power. 77% are saying yes, and I'm pretty sure you guys are correct. For the G13V, Australia and Puerto Rico, we're nuts about it. There's a lot of cool cars in Puerto Rico, like the Starlets. I like those too. Nivlak put Subaru forged pistons in the 4200. Yeah, I remember talking to Calvin about that. I think that they were pretty close. Suzuki Sports. For the 13B, aside from pieces of mine, is there any advantage to trunnion upgrade in my stock 408 LS swap? If it's just an all-stock motor, I wouldn't worry about it. Like I said, the reason I would normally recommend it is because of really high mileage rockers. If you take a look at the rockers, are the push rod cups like all shiny and worn out? Are the push rods themselves worn out? Maybe then. Otherwise, I've never run a trunnion upgrade on anything that I've run on the dyno. So I don't know if that tells you anything. Depends on where the injectors are located to begin with. The injectors are located in the cylinder head on the Sprint motor. Can you spray wet nitrous on E85? Yes, we've done that a lot. We've only done that. I haven't mixed E85, spraying E85 with the nitrous and run the motor on gas. I've only run nitrous or only run E85 through the nitrous when I'm also running E85 in the motor. What is the worst engine you've run on the dyno as far as wear and tear being the issue, worn out, so to speak? The worst one probably that actually ran still was this 4.8 that I did not too long ago, where it had a broken push rod, it had a broken rocker. The guy tried to glue it back together. It had ports that were literally just filled up with carbon. So that head wouldn't flow at all. And same thing with that cylinder, was all packed with carbon and stuff. It ran on a few of the cylinders. It ran. It also had a bad camshaft and a bad lifter. And so it had a number of problems. It's probably the worst one I've ever tried to run on the dyno. Suzuki stuff is similar to looking at a Honda. Yeah, the G6. The 4-valve stuff is really nice. I like the Suzuki stuff. I went to trainings on my 5.3. The original rockers were loose. Yeah, 295,000 miles. Like I said, you get how many miles do you actually expect stuff to work? Didn't the 4.8 Big Bang have a rust spot in the cylinder? Yeah, it did. That's the photo that I use all the time when I'm talking about ring gap. You can see the rust stain in it, but we didn't care. We ball honed it. On the new Engine Masters episode, they put a tunnel ram on the dual carb one and didn't make any more power. Why was that? I haven't seen those results, so I'm not sure. The one that I saw, I thought that they did a dual quad top versus a single quad top. But I didn't ever talk to Brule about the results of that. Speaking of injector placement, will port injection gain power and economy over throttle body injection? No, it usually does not gain power over throttle body injection, only because you're introducing fuel, like we're talking about here. You're introducing fuel farther away from the valve. So you have charge cooling usually from introducing fuel into the top of the manifold as opposed to having it down at the port. Port injection, if you're doing true sequential injection, which you're not going to be able to do with the throttle body, you're doing true sequential injection and you're doing individual cylinder trimming, you can usually get better fuel mileage with port injection. What are the signs you have a bad turbo? Yeah, we normally do you grab the shaft and try to push it back and forth to see if you have thrust play, and then you can move it up and down and around to see if you have play in those directions also. I don't know does anybody know what the flex fuel LS injector flow rate is? Is water methanol a good option? It does help cooling. I just have never, I don't think water methanol, I'm not convinced yet that water methanol is good for distribution on these long run or intake manifolds. So watching 1320 the other day, a guy claimed to have a 4.3 Cyclone S10 with a 1700 horsepower. It's twin brothers, they own trucks. That displacement is possible to have that kind of power. I doubt that you would do that with a stock block or anything. So maybe it's some kind of race block or something. Single carb tunnel ram lost power. Yeah, I would expect it to. I wondered how bad the distribution was on that top. You could make a much better single carburetor tunnel ram top instead of having it come down and then go out, you just have it come out at an angle. And that the higher you place the carburetor on that piece that you would have to make, the better it would be. And then it would be interesting to see, because I'm sure, I don't think on that small block that they needed, two 750s or whatever. So you could put a single 950 on there and do what it could do, as long as you could get the distribution. Yeah, I don't know what the I don't know what the flex fuel injector flow rate is. It says 50 pounds an hour. So 50 pounds an hour would support a lot of power. I mean, that'll support NA, it'll support 500 horsepower, less on E85. In fact, I can use my new calculator that I got for Christmas. So 50 times 16 is 800 times 0.75. So 600 horsepower, let's say, on E85, but not under boost NA. Yeah, Matt probably knows what they are. Guys probably search for those, I would imagine. Robert, you got 549,000 miles in your 5.3. Respect, man. $500,000. Also, uncapped flex fuel injector flow rates. Yeah, those flow a lot. If it started out as a 50 and it's decapped, it would flow a lot. But like we've talked about with decapping injectors, you're gonna have to decap a lot of them to get 8 of them that would all flow the same. Specialization James, GM designed the Metro platform in exchange for a 5% share in Suzuki. I'd like to see a tunnel ram with 4 Weber 48 IDFs on it. So you want a tunnel ram and then like downdraft injectors? I remember them selling I think B&M did it. They sold the adapters that you bolt onto a standard 4-barrel that had the two that mounted it was like a cross deal. It had the 2 Webers that you put on. I thought, as much as I like Webers and Delordos that you could put on there, Makunis, that's a terrible idea to have it go into the side and then go down on a manifold that's designed for a Holley carburetor anyway. Does Richard have any videos on N351 Ford Sportsman head? No, but I did write a book where we tested those on the Ford Short Track Power book. I think we tested those N351 heads, but I don't have any videos up on it because that was probably before YouTube. The Holley high ram made more power on the 102 millimeter throttle body over the fast high ram. On any power, the horsepower monster channel went to 600 horsepower. I don't know what you mean by fast high ram. Fast doesn't make a manifold called the high ram. So is it their LSX HR thing or something? That's basically the guys from Engine Masters tested that because Brule was asking me about that before I came back home from Christmas. They have the version, which is basically the Carbon TR or PTR, whatever version it is. It was that adjustable one where you can take the lid off and they have different stacks that you can put in it. And then for years, Comp had been talking about doing a composite version of that wasn't carbon fiber. Because I remember getting the carbon fiber one. That video's up. I tested that intake manifold already. So Brule asked me what it would do. I said, yeah, this is that manifold. This is that carbon fiber one that I didn't want to touch. because I knew it was way too expensive and I couldn't afford to buy it if I broke it or something or scratched it. And so we did run that, and it did well, but it did like you would expect these kinds of manifolds to do with the runner length that they have and stuff. And it made decent power. I'll be interested to see what their test shows. Have you ever used the guide that Matt uses to send the injectors, send them back to you with flow rates and the ones which you'd recommend using? He matches all 8 of them. Is that the guys from Snake Eaters? Is that guy? I'm also had to set it to put 2 DCOEs on the mini blowers. Yep. Should we do a power for peanut ports challenge? My motor against yours. We'd have to use the same. I don't have one of those, so I don't know what we would have to do. I'm not interested in trying to compete with somebody for who can make more power. I don't care about that. That's not what I do. I'm not trying to be the best engine builder or make the most power or any of that. All I'm trying to do is demonstrate to people, here's what happens. Here's how you can get power. Here's what happens when you do stuff. That sort of ego thing that's not for me. I have a 2007 GMC Sierra stock L76. That's a good motor with a new replacement crate motor from GM. It has 50,000 miles on it. Yeah, then just run it stock if you want it to be reliable. Have you ever tested the plastic manifold that was made aftermarket for the first gen 5.7 350s? The only composite manifold that I know of, Airflow Research did, and we've run those a few. They made both single planes and dual planes. I don't think that they're making them anymore, but we have run those a lot at West Tech. They were saying the fast high ram style intake was too much. They knew from the get-go it was more for turbo. It's actually not for a turbo. It's just for different engine speeds. Yeah, I thought we had the tracker here in the United States also. So I'm going to go ahead and close out our poll at 74% saying, yes, we're relocating. And I think it will. Every time we've tried to relocate the injectors in almost anything, we did make more power. You have major knowledge on the big 3.8 liter, not the 3.8 liter Grand National. I mean, I know what a turbo is, and I know what that motor is, and I know what people have done to make it more powerful. But I have much more experience with the 3800 with the supercharged version. Will flex fuel injectors fit a fast LSX intake manifold because the truck manifold does not fit under the 350Z hood, and I don't want to cut it. I don't know about the length. I don't know how, or the height. I don't know that part of it. We run, taller injectors on truck manifolds and fast manifolds and all kinds of stuff like I did in the last video that I did. I just made another bracket to bolt the fuel rail on. I mean, there's a limit to how much you can do, but it becomes a problem sometimes, especially when I have to do, like when we did 20 different intake manifolds. Well, there were also, 5 or 6 different throttle bodies and 10 or 15 different fuel rails that we had to use because the stuff doesn't interchange. So it was it's problematic. So I had to go through each one of them and make a metrics, make a list. Okay, this throttle body, this injector, this rail, this map sensor, all that stuff. Will flex fuel injectors fit a fast LS? Oh, yeah, we did that. So is there any advantage to running this composite intake? What was its target goal? I don't know what you mean by its target goal. I think that what they're originally trying to do is make a lightweight manifold, which would be good for racing because lightweight is the same as adding power. And I think that what they were experimenting with is trying to get, I think maybe they're worried about, charge air about heat soaking and stuff, but that's actually not really a thing. The temperature of the intake manifold doesn't impart temperature into the air. The air is going by way too fast at wide open throttle. It'd be much more prevalent at part throttle. Ricky, not even in competition with Uncle Tony. There's no engine competition between he and I. He's not an engine guy. The first gen 3800 is the best of them all. Really? Yeah, it had trumpets in the fast style intake manifold. Yeah, that's the Carbon PTR. It's that company that Fast had them do it or bought it from them or whatever. And they made I think it wasn't carbon fiber, so it was a composite, because they obviously had a bunch of experience with the composite stuff when they did the fast manifolds. In Japan, the Cultus GTI made 115 horsepower. That would be good. You gonna do a show tonight? Yes, I will. Stock LS injector hats and different spraying holes. Yeah, you can have spacers. And a lot of times the spacers work on the top and on the bottom. Although on the top, or I mean on the bottom, if you're spacing the spray pattern area, you have to look and see what's going on. And the guys from West Tech went through that recently with the guys from Engine Masters, because they were testing injector placement on a tunnel ram, and they even placed it up above on the top of the tunnel ram. And part of the problem that they had is, like always, you have distribution problems. So the spray pattern becomes ultra critical, especially if you're trying to crisscross it and shoot it into another port. So all of that stuff needs to be taken into consideration. If you're putting a spacer on it and the nozzle is a 20 or 25% dispersion cone, maybe it hits the edge of that spacer, and then if it hits the edge and it puddles, that's obviously not good. The L76 VMAX from before. I want to put a reliable upgrade turbo kit. I don't know anything about specific kits for stuff. The tune is going to be ultra critical, and if you already have the motor, if the motor's out of the car, I would put ring gap in it. Not the first gen 3800 have 8mm rocker shaft bolts. I had the one I had to replace it and go to 10mm. How much horsepower can you squeeze out of a Jeep and keep it safe? Some people use it for more torque, but it won't rev as high. The cost of that LSXR manifold, probably many parts. It is a good manifold. I mean, the regular fast manifold, the LSXR and the LSXRT, work really well. The other one, the high ram, or whatever they're calling it, the LSHR or whatever it's called, that one is much more of a high RPM deal. And in my opinion, Fast already had that with their adjustable version of the LSXR and the LSXRT, because they were both interchangeable. The lids were. So you could put long runners and short runners and medium length runners in there, and it's not, you could have the RPM range that you want. Now you're going to trade off power, and same thing with that new design. There's no manifold that's going to do what a long runner manifold does, and then also what a short runner manifold, unless it has both of those runners. Does anybody know how much you save going to an aluminum block LS versus an iron block? Run stock LS, but at injector nozzle can be compressed and shoot the fuel like a diesel truck nozzle, like it super miss the fuel. So are you wanting to increase the fuel pressure to do that? Do you need bigger injectors if you move the injector up in the port? No, not necessarily. As long as the injector size will still support the power level. I'm using a set of LS9 injectors that have different top hats and nozzles on them for my G10. I reconfigure the injectors from the intake to the cylinder head. I did some work with that when we were trying to change the fuel mileage on the Sprint Turbo. So we played with different injectors in the Sprint Turbo and injector patterns, because the stock injectors that were in there, I think were like, I call them pencil injectors. They were like streams, I think. And so we wanted to mist it in there so we could get theoretically better fuel mileage. Do they make a dual runner manifold for the LS? They make manifolds that are adjustable that you can do that with, but not, I don't think ones that go from one to the other like the Hemi does, which is really nice. Holy Terminator, can we carburet? You can run a carburetor on an LS very easily. An intake manifold and a carburetor, and then the ignition controller. It's pretty cheap. Aluminum LS motors around here cost somewhere around 1,200. You can get a cast iron run for 700. Yeah, they cost less. I think the guy wanted to know what the weight difference was. Terry, this is live. It's live. It's all the way live. In fact, we have 2 more minutes and then it won't be live anymore. Have you seen the dual throttle body intake on the new Mustang 5.0 rated at 500 horsepower? I have not. Gregory seems to think that there's a 100-pound difference between the aluminum one and the iron one. Yeah, and this will be the last comment for today. I got to get going because I got to do a video and then obviously do a live later on tonight. When we go to the wrecking yards, they don't care what motor is, other than the big block Chevy for some reason had a specialized pricing on it, but it may not now. Before, it was complete motor was one price. Didn't matter if it was a 4-cylinder or an 8-cylinder, a 6-cylinder, whatever it was, you could get all of that. And now they're picking you to death with, oh, does it have an alternator? Does it have a starter? Does it have injectors? Does it have a throttle body? Does it have an intake manifold? It's all of these things that are just add-on prices to the stuff that they have. And it's unfortunate, probably because I've been telling people for so long that it's such a good deal to go to the wrecking yard, and they're like, oh yeah, we're obviously not charging nearly enough. It's too good of a deal. So they don't want to do that anymore. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys. Welcome back after Christmas, and we got New Year's coming up. I'm going to be heading down. Ben's going to be sending me the stuff out for the 2.2. And I just ordered the rings so get your projects done. Just order the rings for the 396, the SS 396, the L78. So we got a lot of cool stuff going. Hopefully I'll be able to run that 2.2 when I go down and start the initial test sequence. I also am going to try to get the Chopacabra cam, and I sent out feelers both to the guys at Cam Motion and to Summit to see if they had a cam that they want to have in that. If somebody has a Chopacabra, please let me know. I've been trying to get one from Texas Speed. If they don't get it, I'm just going to try to buy one from somewhere. But so somebody let me know. Yeah, hit me up, man. And on that note, it is time to go. Where's Milo? Milo.